ever searched for IELTS information online and immediately felt confused? One website says Academic IELTS, another says General IELTS. Then someone tells you that academic is harder, while someone else says they're almost the same. Before you know it, you're more confused than when you started.
Honestly, that's exactly how I felt. When I first heard about IELTS, I thought there was only one test. Then suddenly, people started talking about academic IELTS and general IELTS, and I had no idea which one I needed.
And you're not alone. Thousands of students face the same confusion. In fact, some students spend weeks preparing for the wrong version of the exam simply because they never understood the difference.
That sounds stressful. Imagine studying for weeks and then realizing you've been preparing for the wrong test.
Exactly. That's why today's episode is so important. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Chat Studio, where we help you improve your English naturally and prepare for IELTS with confidence.
And if you're preparing for IELTS and feeling confused about where to start, don't worry, you're in the right place.
Before we begin, if you enjoy learning English through real conversations and want more IELTS episodes like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to English Chat Studio, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
So let's solve this mystery today. Academic IELTS or general IELTS? Which one should students choose?
Great question. But before we answer it, let's talk about why so many students get confused in the first place.
I think one reason is the names themselves. Academic and general sound a little vague.
That's true. Many students hear the word academic and immediately think, this must be the difficult version. Then they hear general and think, this one must be easy.
Isn't that true?
Not exactly. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. Neither test is automatically easier or harder. They are designed for different purposes.
So the real question isn't which test is easier. The real question is which test matches your goal.
Exactly. Let's imagine two students. The first student wants to study at a university in another country. Maybe they want to do a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or even a PhD. The second student wants to immigrate, work abroad, or apply for residency in another country. Do these two students have the same goal?
No, their goals are completely different.
And that's why IELTS offers different versions of the exam.
That already makes more sense.
Another reason students become confused is because they listen to too many opinions online.
Oh, yes. One person says, take academic. Another person says, take general. Someone else says, academic gives you more opportunities.
Exactly. But IELTS isn't about opinions, it's about requirements. Universities have requirements. Immigration programs have requirements. Employers may have requirements. The correct IELTS test depends on those requirements.
So instead of asking random people online, students should first understand their own goal.
That's right. Let me ask you a question. Imagine a student wants to study engineering at a university in Canada. Should they choose a test simply because their friend recommended it?
Probably not.
Exactly. They should check what the university requires.
That sounds much more logical.
Another emotional challenge many students face is fear.
Fear?
Yes. Sometimes students worry so much about choosing the wrong IELTS test that they delay their preparation completely.
I can relate to that. Sometimes confusion becomes an excuse to postpone studying.
Absolutely. Students spend weeks researching instead of practicing English. They watch video after video but never actually begin preparing.
That's a very common problem.
The good news is that by the end of today's episode, you'll clearly understand the difference between academic and general IELTS, who should take each one, and how to make the right decision for your situation.
That sounds helpful, because right now I'm sure many listeners are wondering which version they actually need.
And here's something interesting. Most students think the biggest mistake is choosing the wrong test, but there's actually another mistake that causes even more problems during IELTS preparation.
Really? What's that?
It's a mistake that many students make without even realizing it, and it can seriously affect their score.
Now I'm curious.
Good, because in the next part, we're going to talk about the most common reasons students struggle with IELTS and the mistakes that hold them back before their preparation even begins. Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, you mentioned that choosing the wrong IELTS test isn't actually the biggest mistake students make. Now I'm really curious. What is the biggest mistake? The biggest mistake is something surprisingly simple. Many students start preparing before they understand their goal.
You mean they start studying without knowing why they're taking IELTS?
Exactly. They hear that IELTS is important, so they immediately begin watching videos, memorizing vocabulary lists, and practicing sample tests. But they never stop to ask themselves one important question. What am I taking IELTS for?
That sounds obvious, but I think a lot of people skip that step.
They do. Imagine you're planning a trip. Before you start driving, you need to know your destination, right?
Of course.
IELTS preparation works the same way. If you don't know your destination, it's very easy to get lost.
Can you give an example?
Sure, let's say Ahmed wants to study business at a university in Australia. He needs academic IELTS, but he spends months preparing with general IELTS materials because his cousin recommended them.
So even though he's studying English, he's not preparing in the most effective way.
Exactly. Then imagine another student, Sarah. She wants to immigrate and work abroad. She needs general IELTS, but she spends weeks worrying about academic IELTS because she thinks it's somehow more valuable.
I can already see how confusion creates unnecessary stress.
That's right. And stress is one of the biggest reasons students struggle with IELTS.
I thought lack of English was the biggest reason.
That's what many people think. But often the real problem is uncertainty. Students don't know which test they need, what score they need, or how long they should prepare.
So they feel overwhelmed before they even begin?
Exactly. And when people feel overwhelmed, they often make poor decisions.
Like what?
For example, some students spend hours every day searching for the perfect study plan.
I've done that before.
Most students have. They jump from one YouTube channel to another, download multiple study guides, and collect hundreds of resources.
That sounds productive, but maybe it isn't?
That's the problem. It feels productive, but it often isn't. Students spend more time organizing their preparation than actually preparing.
Wow, that's true.
Another common mistake is listening to other people's experiences without considering their own situation.
What do you mean?
Someone online says, academic IELTS is impossible. Someone else says, general IELTS is very easy. Another person says, you need advanced vocabulary to get a good score. Students hear all these opinions and start believing them.
But everyone's situation is different.
Exactly. A person applying for university may have completely different requirements from someone applying for immigration.
So comparing yourself to everyone else isn't always helpful.
That's right. And here's another mistake students make. They focus on labels instead of requirements.
Labels?
Yes, some students hear the word academic and think it sounds more impressive. Others hear the word general and think it sounds easier. But IELTS doesn't work that way.
So students should stop asking which test sounds better and start asking which test they actually need.
Perfectly said.
What about students who still aren't sure?
That's a very common situation. If you're unsure, the first thing you should check is the requirement of the university, employer, immigration program, or organization you're applying to.
That sounds much more reliable than asking random people online.
Exactly. IELTS is not about guessing. It's about matching the correct test to your goal.
I think that's an important message because many students make IELTS seem much more complicated than it really is.
Absolutely. Once you understand your purpose, many decisions become much easier. And here's the exciting part. Now that we've talked about the mistakes students make, it's time to focus on solutions.
Finally, I think everyone wants to know how to make the right choice.
In the next part, I'm going to share a simple step-by-step strategy that will help you decide whether academic IELTS or general IELTS is the right option for you.
And if you've ever felt confused about which test to take, don't miss the next part, because this is where everything starts becoming clear.
Welcome back. So far, we've talked about why students get confused and the mistakes that often slow down their IELTS journey. Now, let's answer the big question. How do you actually decide whether academic IELTS or general IELTS is right for you?
Yes, this is the part I've been waiting for.
The good news is that you don't need to overcomplicate it. In fact, I like to use a simple 4-step strategy.
Only 4 steps?
Only 4 steps. If you follow them carefully, you'll avoid a lot of confusion.
Great. Let's start with step 1.
Step 1 is simple. Ask yourself, why am I taking IELTS?
That sounds obvious, but it's probably more important than people realize.
Exactly. Before opening any IELTS book or watching any preparation video, be clear about your goal. Are you planning to study abroad? Are you planning to immigrate? Do you want to work in another country? Or do you need IELTS for professional registration?
So the first step is understanding your purpose.
Right, because your purpose determines everything else. For example, if your goal is university admission, that's very different from someone applying for immigration.
That makes sense.
Now, let's move to step 2. Check the official requirements of the organization you're applying to.
Why is that important?
Because requirements matter more than opinions. Imagine you want to study at a university in the UK. Instead of asking 10 different people online, you should visit the university website and see exactly what they require.
That sounds much more reliable.
Absolutely. Sometimes students spend days reading online discussions when the answer is already available on the official website.
That's true.
Step 3 is understanding the basic difference between the two tests.
Okay, this is probably what everyone wants to know.
Academic IELTS is usually for people who want to study at universities or higher education institutions. General IELTS is usually for people who want to immigrate, work abroad, or apply for residency programs.
So if I'm planning to do a master's degree in another country, academic IELTS will probably be the right choice.
In most cases, yes.
And if I want to immigrate to countries like Canada, Australia, or New Zealand, general IELTS is often required.
Exactly. Of course, students should always verify the latest requirements, but that's the general rule.
Honestly, it's starting to feel much simpler now.
That's because many students think the decision is complicated when it's actually based on a few clear facts.
What's step 4?
Step 4 is stop worrying about which test sounds harder.
That's interesting.
Many students ask questions like, which IELTS is easier? Which IELTS should I take to get a higher score? Which IELTS is less stressful?
I've seen those questions everywhere.
The problem is that they're focusing on the wrong thing. The goal isn't to find the easier test. The goal is to find the correct test.
That's a very important difference.
Exactly. Imagine applying to a university with a general IELTS score when the university requires academic IELTS. It doesn't matter whether general IELTS felt easier, you still won't meet the requirement.
So choosing the right test is more important than choosing the comfortable test.
Absolutely. And here's another tip. Once you've identified the correct IELTS version, stop researching and start preparing.
That's good advice.
Many students stay trapped in research mode. They keep asking questions, but never begin practicing.
And the longer they wait, the more nervous they become.
Exactly. Action creates confidence. Preparation creates confidence. Practice creates confidence.
I think that's something every IELTS student needs to hear.
Definitely. Now, let's quickly review our strategy. First, identify your goal. Second, check official requirements. Third, understand the difference between academic and general IELTS. Fourth,
Stop focusing on which one seems easier and focus on which one is required.
That's actually a very practical system.
It is, but knowing the strategy isn't enough.
What do you mean?
Well, many students understand the theory, but still struggle when they see real IELTS situations.
So they need examples.
Exactly. In the next part, we're going to look at real student situations and real IELTS examples. Together, we'll figure out which test each student should take and why.
That sounds really helpful because I think many listeners are already trying to compare their own situation.
Then don't go anywhere. The next part will make this decision even clearer with practical examples you can relate to. Welcome back. In the last part, we discussed a simple strategy for choosing the correct IELTS test. Now let's put that strategy into practice with some real-life examples.
I think this is the part many students need because sometimes theory sounds easy, but real situations can still be confusing.
Exactly. So let's imagine a few students and decide which IELTS test they should take.
Sounds good?
Let's meet our first student, Ali. Ali has recently finished high school and wants to study computer science at a university in Australia. Which IELTS test do you think Ali needs?
Based on what we've learned so far, I would say academic IELTS.
Correct. Why? Because Ali's goal is higher education. Universities usually require academic IELTS because it focuses on language skills needed in academic environments.
So if Ali is applying for a degree program, academic IELTS is likely the right choice.
Exactly. Now let's meet our second student, Sarah. Sarah is planning to immigrate to Canada with her family. She wants to improve her opportunities and settle there permanently. Which IELTS should she take?
That sounds like general IELTS.
Correct again. Since her purpose is immigration rather than university admission, general IELTS is typically the appropriate choice.
These examples are making the difference much easier to understand.
Great. Let's try another one. Meet Ahmed. Ahmed is already a qualified nurse and wants to work in another country. Now what do you think?
This one feels a little harder.
And that's exactly why students get confused. The answer depends on the requirements of the employer or professional organization.
So there isn't always one automatic answer?
Exactly. Some professions have specific language requirements. That's why checking official requirements is so important.
I see. That's another reason students shouldn't rely only on advice from friends.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about another common question. Many students ask, are the academic and general IELTS tests completely different?
I've wondered that too.
The answer is no. Some parts of the exam are very similar. For example, the speaking test is the same format for both versions. The listening test is also the same.
Really?
Yes. That's why students are often surprised when they learn the difference is mainly in the reading and writing sections.
Interesting.
Let's look at a simple example. Imagine an IELTS speaking question. What do you enjoy doing in your free time? A weak answer might be, I watch TV.
That's very short.
Exactly. A stronger answer could be, in my free time, I enjoy watching documentaries because I learn new things and relax after a busy day. I especially like programs about science and technology.
That sounds much more natural and complete.
And here's the important point. Whether you're taking academic IELTS or general IELTS, that speaking strategy remains useful.
So students shouldn't think they're learning two completely different exams.
Exactly. The core English skills are still the same. Listening, reading, writing, speaking.
That should make many students feel less nervous.
I hope so. Now, let's look at one more situation. Imagine two friends. One chooses academic IELTS because his university requires it. The other chooses general IELTS because he's applying for immigration. Both spend 6 months practicing consistently. Who has a better chance of success?
I would say both of them.
Correct. Success doesn't come from choosing the better IELTS test. Success comes from choosing the correct test and preparing properly.
That's probably one of the biggest lessons from today's episode.
I agree. Unfortunately, many students waste energy comparing academic and general IELTS instead of improving their English skills.
And that's time they could spend practicing.
Exactly. But even after choosing the correct test, many students still face another challenge.
Low guess. Confidence?
That's right. Fear, self-doubt, overthinking, and anxiety stop many students from performing at their best.
I think every IELTS student has experienced those feelings at some point.
Definitely. And in the next part, we're going to talk about confidence, mindset, and how to stop fear from controlling your IELTS journey.
If you've ever doubted yourself, worried about your English level, or felt nervous about IELTS, don't miss the next part, because it's going to be one of the most important discussions in this entire episode.
Welcome back. So far, we've talked about the differences between academic and general IELTS, common mistakes students make, and how to choose the correct test. But now let's discuss something that doesn't appear on the IELTS question paper, yet affects almost every student's score.
Let me guess. Confidence?
Exactly. Confidence and mindset.
Honestly, I think many students struggle more with fear than with English itself.
That's very true. I've met students who had strong English skills but performed poorly because they were nervous. I've also seen students with average English skills achieve excellent results because they stayed calm and confident.
Why does confidence make such a big difference?
Because fear affects your performance. When you're nervous, your mind becomes busy. You forget vocabulary you already know. You struggle to organize your thoughts. You start overthinking simple questions.
That happens to me sometimes. I know the answer, but when I'm nervous, my mind suddenly goes blank.
And that's completely normal. The problem is that many students think confidence comes after success.
Doesn't it?
Not always. In many cases, confidence comes from preparation. The more prepared you are, the more confident you become.
That makes sense.
Let's talk about a common fear. Many students worry that their English isn't good enough.
I've heard that many times. People often say, my grammar isn't perfect, or my vocabulary isn't advanced.
Exactly. But here's the truth. IELTS examiners are not looking for perfection. They're looking for communication.
That's an important difference.
Very important. You don't need to sound like a university professor. You don't need to know thousands of difficult words. You need to communicate clearly and effectively.
I think many students put too much pressure on themselves.
They do, and pressure often creates more mistakes. Imagine someone asks you a simple question. What do you usually do on weekends? Instead of answering naturally, some students start thinking, should I use advanced vocabulary? Am I making grammar mistakes? Does this sound intelligent enough?
And by the time they've finished thinking, they've forgotten to answer the question.
Exactly. Confidence comes from focusing on communication, not perfection.
That's a lesson that applies beyond IELTS too.
Absolutely. Now, let's discuss another common problem, comparing yourself to others.
Social media has made that even worse.
Very true. A student watches a video titled, How I Got Band 8.5 in 1 month. Then they immediately feel discouraged.
Because they think they'll never achieve that.
Exactly. But they don't know that person's background. Maybe that student had years of English experience. Maybe they studied in an English-speaking environment. Maybe they practiced for much longer than 1 month.
So comparisons are often unfair.
That's right. The only useful comparison is between who you were yesterday and who you are today.
I like that.
Let me share a simple confidence strategy. Every day, do one small thing that improves your English. Read a short article. Listen to a podcast. Practice speaking for 5 minutes. Learn a few useful words.
Small actions seem less overwhelming.
Exactly. Confidence grows through consistent action, not through waiting, not through worrying, not through overthinking.
That's powerful.
Here's another mindset shift. Instead of asking, what if I fail IELTS? Ask, what if I succeed?
That's a completely different perspective.
It is. Many students spend months imagining failure. Very few spend time imagining success.
And your mindset affects your motivation.
Absolutely. A positive mindset doesn't mean ignoring challenges. It means believing you can overcome them.
I think many listeners needed to hear that today.
I hope so. Because choosing the correct IELTS test is important. Understanding the exam is important. Practicing regularly is important. But believing in your ability to improve is equally important.
And improvement doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly. Every strong IELTS candidate was once a beginner. Every Band 7 student was once struggling with English. Every confident speaker was once nervous. Progress takes time.
That's encouraging.
Before we finish today's episode, let's bring everything together. We've covered a lot of important information, and in the final part, we'll review the key lessons and create a simple action plan that listeners can start using immediately.
So if you want a clear roadmap for what to do next after this episode, stay with us because the final part is coming up next.
Welcome to the final part of today's episode. If you've stayed with us until now, you've already learned something very important. Choosing between academic IELTS and general IELTS doesn't have to be confusing.
I agree. When we started this episode, the difference felt complicated, but now it feels much clearer.
That's exactly our goal here at English Chat Studio. We want to make IELTS simple, practical, and less stressful.
So let's do a quick review of everything we've discussed today.
Great idea. First, we learned that academic IELTS and general IELTS exist for different purposes.
Academic IELTS is usually for students who want to study at a university or another higher education institution.
Correct. And general IELTS is commonly required for immigration, work opportunities, and residency applications.
Then we talked about one of the biggest mistakes students make.
Yes, many students start preparing before clearly understanding their goal.
Which often leads to confusion, stress, and wasted time.
Exactly. Then we discussed a simple step-by-step strategy.
First, identify your goal.
Second, check the official requirements of the university, employer, or immigration program.
Third, understand the difference between academic and general IELTS.
And fourth, stop worrying about which test seems easier and focus on which one is actually required.
Then we looked at real examples.
Right. We saw how a student applying to university would usually need academic IELTS, while someone applying for immigration would often need general IELTS.
And we learned that checking official requirements is always the safest option.
Absolutely. Then we talked about confidence and mindset.
My favorite part of the episode.
Mine too. Because many students think IELTS success is only about English, but confidence, consistency, and preparation are equally important.
I loved the idea that confidence comes from preparation.
That's one of the most important lessons every IELTS student should remember. Now let's create a simple action plan.
Something listeners can do immediately after this episode?
Exactly. Step 1. Write down your IELTS goal. Ask yourself, why am I taking IELTS? For study? For immigration? For work? For professional registration?
Having a clear goal makes everything easier.
Step 2. Visit the official website of the organization you're applying to. Check their IELTS requirements. Don't rely on rumors or random advice.
Trust official information.
Exactly. Step 3. Once you know which IELTS version you need, stop researching and start preparing.
That's important. Many students stay in research mode for too long.
Yes, progress comes from practice, not endless searching. Step 4. Create a simple study routine. Even 30 minutes a day can make a huge difference over time.
Small, consistent actions are better than occasional motivation.
Exactly. And finally, be patient with yourself. Improvement takes time. Every strong English speaker was once a beginner. Every successful IELTS candidate started somewhere.
That's a great reminder.
Before we finish, let's ask our listeners something. What about you? Are you planning to take academic IELTS or general IELTS?
And what was the most useful thing you learned from today's episode?
Tell us in the comments below. We read your comments and your question might be featured in a future episode of English Chat Studio.
We'd love to hear about your IELTS journey.
And if today's episode helped you understand IELTS a little better, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to English Chat Studio, and share this episode with a friend who is preparing for IELTS.
It really helps the channel grow and allows us to create more free IELTS content for learners around the world.
Now, before we say goodbye, let's talk about our next episode.
I'm excited for this one.
In episode 3, we're going to discuss a topic that confuses almost every IELTS student at some point. Understanding IELTS band scores. What does band 6, 7, and 8 really mean?
That's a big one. I think many students know they want a higher band score, but they don't actually understand what those numbers represent.
Exactly. We'll explain how band scores work, what examiners look for, and what separates a band 6 student from a band 7 or band 8 student.
So if you've ever wondered how IELTS scoring actually works, don't miss the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening.
Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in yourself.
And we'll see you in the next episode of English Chat Studio.
Goodbye, everyone, and happy studying!